Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to set up our project files that we're going to use throughout the semester. And I've decided that we're going to do a computer store, a website for a computer store. I'm going to call it something simple like Georgian Computers. And each week what I will do is just add to this, and you can follow along on your computers, and it will be loosely based off the term project. So my advice is to follow along, do what I'm doing, and then at some point you can start making modifications to your own website. So as you can see here, I've got Visual Studio already turned on, and I'm going to do a create new. And I'm going to select this drop down, the C#, because it kind of narrows down what I want to use. And notice the ASP.NET Core web application. It's important that you do that and not the .NET Core for a console app. Make sure it's the Windows. Okay. Select next, and I'm just going to call it Georgian Computers. Okay, and I'm going to navigate to where I want to save it. I've got a file set up on my desktop, and it's comp 2084 S2020 for summer. Select the folder. And I'm going to place solution and project in the same directory. Now, this is going to take me to this page here, and it's really important that you make sure that you don't do web application because that's going to be not what we want. We actually want the web application MVC, Model View Controller. Okay. Now there's two things that I want to highlight. Do not select Enable Docker Support. That's a different thing. It's outside of the scope of the project. Okay. And the other thing is here, the authentication. So I want to change authentication to individual user accounts. Okay. It's important that you do that step. So again, that's authentication, change individual user accounts. Okay. The reason I actually have selected that individual user accounts, it's because people are going to want to create an account and log into your website. And by doing that, it allows for that. And also maybe at some point in the future, you're going to want like social media interaction and stuff like that. That's what that helps you with. Okay, at this point, I can go ahead and hit the create button. And here we are. This is our project start page. So if you got to this point, awesome, we're in great shape. Notice the name of the file that we're currently in. It's Georgian Computers, and you should have this ASP.NET Core, build your app, connect to the cloud, learn your IDE. So if you're here, you're in great shape. So before I get too deep into Visual Studio, the one thing I do want to do is go into my GitHub, and I'm going to create a new repo for this, a new repo, and I'm going to call this one Georgian Computers. Okay, and it's going to be public, and I'm going to create my repo. Brings me to this page. I'm going to grab my URL, and I'm going to go back in here and do what we did the last time. Okay. And now you can see I've got my GitHub connected, and everything is in here. I could do comments, start of repo for Georgian. There. Actually, for now, I'm not going to put any comments in there. I'm just going to go back to my Solution Explorer. But the one thing, if I go back to GitHub and I do a refresh, you can see that the repo is actually in there now. Okay, so the fact that it's actually in there tells me now that I definitely do have the connection from my Visual Studio over to my GitHub. And all of the files that I have in Visual Studio are there at the same time. So one more thing that I do want to do is I want to go on to Georgian Computers, right click, and open folder in File Explorer. This takes me to where I've got it saved on my desktop. And notice all the different files are in there, as well as my 2 Git files. Okay, so you should have that in yours in the same way that I do. One thing I want to highlight here is that I'm in my project file folder, and I want to show something really interesting. And it's the fact that all of those files so far come out to 4.18 megabytes, okay, which is a huge difference from pre-ASP.NET Core. Core, that's the one great thing about Core, is how lightweight it is compared to previous versions of MVC 5 or even 6, I think they're out to. But Core is much, much more lightweight than the previous versions of this. So I just wanted to make sure, or kind of highlight that right now. Okay, so I'll close that. So right off the bat, I want to highlight something here. I've got this error down here, and it's talking about my Nuget package restore to generate this file. I haven't compiled this. I haven't tried to compile it. In fact, if I go to debug, I'm going to start without debugging. Right away, it's actually going to tell me that I've got an error. So I tried to do the debug in here, and it's been taking quite some time. And what I'm seeing is this restoring packages for my file name, installing system xml.readwrite 430. It looks like it's doing some sort of installation, which I suspect may have something to do with my dependencies. So there you go. What I had on here was in my dependencies folder and down in packages. If I open those up, I had all of these files that were outdated. And because they were outdated, what I was going to do is actually go in and show you how to do an update on those. Let's see if I can... no. If I were to manage the package, you would have seen all of these were outdated, and it said now it's got 5 updates. So it looks like all of those were just previously updated for me. So it's kind of a nice feature that it went in and did that cleanup. So I'm going to close that out. I'm going to try to compile it in a second. But for now, there is one thing I want to show you in your Solution Explorer again. So if I go back to here, I go into the Explorer. And if you notice inside a bin or debug, the Net Core app 3.1, we've got all of these here. That's because we've tried to compile it, but these are all the DLLs that are associated with compiling. In your case, if you had a current version right now, this folder would likely have been completely empty until you try to do at least one build or one compile. Okay, so there's a good chance that your bin folder would have been empty if you were at the point where you did not yet try to compile. After you compile, that bin folder is going to fill right up. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take a little quick tour of some of the features in the Solution Explorer. So you see this dependencies right here. There's a lot of stuff in there. I'm not going to get into all of it right now, but definitely the package managers are in here. And yeah, the package manager for the .NET Core is Nuget. Excuse me. It's Nuget, but don't worry about that too much right now. We'll work with that a little bit more later. But let me close out the dependencies and let's go to www root. And you see what's in here is your CSS and your JavaScript, your icons, stuff like that. I'm not going to get into these three right now, but I want to look at the apps setting.json. Okay, so when I open that up, there's a couple of things that you have to understand about this one, but it's not hugely important at this moment. Just I wanted to open it up and show it to you. This is your configuration file. It deals with your database connections and file paths and mail server credentials and all that kind of stuff. It's a fairly important file, but we're going to deal with it throughout the course, but definitely not right now. So if you look here, default connection server local DB, and you can read through all that stuff there. So this file we're definitely going to be coming back to. Okay, so what I do want to do is just do I'm going to do a debug start without debugging, and let's just have a look and see what happens. Okay, look what we've got here. We've got Georgian computers, home, privacy, register, login. We've got this message here, and this footer down here. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on here, and if I hit home, we're in home. If I hit privacy, it takes me to there. Register, I've got this preloaded page already, and login, I've got that. And I can go back to privacy. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that's already been provided for us, and we haven't even done anything yet. So let's get back into the code, and there's a couple more things I want to quickly go over right now. Okay, notice a second ago I did the debug start without debugging, and there's start debugging, and you see the difference in the arrows. And then you've got IIS Express. I would recommend right now that you don't do that, because what will happen is if you use this, your debugger will be going, and you won't be able to actually go and make any changes to your code when you've selected this as your option. So if you debug without start without debugging, you can make changes and kind of update them and refresh and all that kind of stuff. So if you do it this way, you're not going to be able to update the code as you're going. So I'm going to actually do the debug again and start without debugging, because I just want to talk about one little thing here. Notice here it says it's a local host, and Visual Studio is just randomly assigning the port number itself. Okay, so it's a local host, and it's just a randomly generated port number. Yours will be different than mine, but each time I run it on my local machine, it will probably select the same number. Anyway, let's move on. But I just wanted to highlight that at the moment this is a local host. We're not on a web server. You're on your local machine server. Okay, so I do want to open up the site one more time, and I'm going to go start without debugging, because what I want to show is that we're using Bootstrap in here as a template, and it's an adaptive design. Okay, and if you notice on my screen, we get the hamburger that starts here, and when it spreads out, the hamburger disappears. Okay, so that's adaptive web design. Meaning that it can go to your website can be viewed on a phone, on a tablet, or on a laptop or PC. Okay, so that's something that comes from Bootstrap. Okay, and the one thing we can do, though, maybe I'll close that out. The one thing we can do is I can go to CSS or www root CSS site and look at all of our CSS, and we can actually use that CSS to override the Bootstrap, but I will say that doing the design side of this is not the focus of the course, so I don't know how much I'm going to be touching of this, these particular files, or interfering too much with Bootstrap. Okay, but just to be aware that in your CSS folder, that's where you can do design changes using CSS. Okay, at this point, I think what I want to do is go, let's go take a look at some issues with controllers, or not issues, but some features of controllers. So if I go back to start without debugging, and if you look at the URL that we have right now, we're in our home screen, but let me go ahead and click privacy. And you can see the URL right now. Okay, so what it's done is it's identified a controller called home. Okay, and probably there's a method inside of that controller called privacy. Okay, so if I go back to Visual Studio and I go to my controllers, and you see here home controller.cs. Okay, if I double click on that, notice .cs means C#, and you can see here, let me zoom in my thing there. So as I get down here, I'm looking for a method called privacy. And you can see it, it's right here on line 26. Okay, so that's just kind of an example of how we're going to start viewing, I shouldn't confuse you with the term view, but this is a little bit of how controllers work. Okay, so we went from a controller, and we called a function, basically. Something you should know is sometimes I do a lot of C++, so sometimes I often interchange the word method with function. To me, they mean the same thing, but if I ever do say the word function, it actually, so you should know it means method as well. Okay. So as you can see here, the privacy is not the only method that there is. We actually have the index method, privacy, and then there's this error method. And what I want you to also notice is that, what are we returning? Okay, these are all action results. Okay, action result here, action result there, and action result here. So these action results, more often than not, are going to return a view. Okay, so for the most part, in this particular controller, we're just trying to do an action result and return a view to the browser. So what's interesting here is that you'll notice in each of these three methods, I'm doing a return view. But the question you have to ask yourself is, how does it know which view? Okay, and I'm going to show you that, because what I'm going to do is add a new page to the website. But if you go over to views, and to home, okay, we're in the home controller, but home, you can see what I've got here, the CS/HTML. And let me click on one of these. And notice here it says CS/HTML, that's C# HTML. Okay. And I'm going to introduce something here, this razor syntax here. And you'll notice right there, I've got the @ symbol. When you see the @ symbol, you're going to be dealing with something called razor. Okay, so let me open up the privacy. And there it is again, the @ symbol. This is the razor syntax. Okay, and what I want to do is I'm actually going to create a new page, and I'm going to link it here. And I think the best way to do it is you start from the back to the front. And so what I want to do right off the bat is add a new controller first, and then work outwards to the actual view of the page. Okay, so at this point, let's just do we'll create a new method, and it's going to be public IA. And you see this action result comes with the IntelliSense action result, and we'll call it about. Okay. And from here, let's see what happens. So far we're getting an error because we don't have anything going on with this. But one thing we definitely have to do is, just like the other ones, is return a view. Okay. And yeah. Okay, so we've started at that point, and you'll notice over here there's this tool over here, this light bulb, like this one will show you potential fixes to issues in your code. That's cool. You can click that and do whatever you want, but I don't want that right now. What I want to do is something phenomenally cool. I have to say, Visual Studio has come up with some phenomenal automation tools to take away the repetitive things that developers have had to do by hand for years. And one of the great things we can do here is I can highlight the actual method name, the about, right click on it, and I can go to add view, and it takes me to this wizard. And you see that it already populates my about. The template, there's a bunch of templates like create, delete, details, edit, empty, list. Right now, we're just going to stick with empty. Use a layout page. So when I use the layout page, it brings me to this. And what I said before was that we were going to, we're going to create another view. But I don't want home. What I want is shared. And you'll see this. This is the template that I want to use right now. This layout.css HTML. Okay, you see there's login partial, validation script, and there's error. I want the layout. Okay, that's the template that I want to use right now. Okay, so if I select all that, you'll see views, shared, layout.css.html. Okay, and I'm going to click add, and I'll let that take a moment and set up. Okay, so we got through that there, and it automatically opened up the page, and we've got our about.css.html. But look at over here now at our views, home. What we previously had was index and privacy. We now have the about page as well. So if you got to this point, we're doing great. So look at here on this line number 4, we've got the it's part of the layout that we specified when we used the wizard to create this page. So let's take a look at this in our we'll do a start without debugging. Click on that and see what happens. Okay, notice we don't have anything yet there because we actually haven't put the link to it in the navbar. But if I go to here, remember what I said, home was a controller, privacy was a method. So if I do the about, okay, and there it is. But we don't have anything associated with it, but we've got the actual page there, so we confirmed that, so we're in good shape. So remember what I said about the debugging, and the reason why I do the start without debugging, so that if I make changes, I can do a refresh and update the page. So if we go back to this view here, and I put in some text, and I save it, okay, notice it is still actually running here on the local host. But if I do a refresh of that, notice that now I get that what I had just typed, and I haven't really done a full debug or anything like that. So it gives me sort of more flexibility to make changes as I go that I want to, without having to wait for all this compiling and stuff like that. So if we go back to the site and intuitively, I want you to quickly think, where would I go and update that navbar so that I've got my about appearing up here in the navbar? Okay, so think about the steps that I went through. Think about the things that were updated and things that were not updated. Okay, so if you logically think through this for a minute and you go back to the wizard that I just used, logically it should take you, your thinking should take you to your shared folder. Okay, so if I go to shared and you see I've got all these folders right here. This is the template that I just took to create that entire page. So logically, if I want to update my navbar, it's more than likely going to be inside my my layout. So if I double click on that, you can see your header in the navbar. So there's all the stuff that we're looking for is actually in here. So right off the bat, I can see what? Home and privacy. Okay, home, index, privacy. So obviously if I want to put that about page and I want to create the link to it, then this is where we need to be to do that work. Okay, so looking at the layout view again, one thing I want to do, just for effect anyway, just to prove to you that I'm in the right place, is I want to go down to my my footer, okay, and I'm going to add the course code. So comp 2008-4, put a little dash in there, save that, and I'll go back, and I'm looking to update this, and just do a refresh, and it should actually update. There we go. So comp 2084, Georgian computers, right? So let's go back into this here and start adding, let's add the about to our navbar. So I'm just navigating to the top, and I'm looking for, good place to look is just below the header. So I've got my nav, that's my nav bar in this area, and you'll see I've got home, index home, and then I've got home, privacy, and privacy. Okay, so obviously I want to add my about page somewhere inside here. This is what I'm looking to modify. So I'm actually going to add the about page between the home and privacy. Okay, obviously I could copy and paste this whole thing and just plunk it in there. But there's I want to slow it down just a little bit. Why not? You know what? Let's save some time. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it in here. Okay. And, that obviously works. But this, I just really quickly, there's these differences, this ASP area. I'm not going to worry about that. It's not an important thing to discuss right now. But what I want to make sure that you highlight is this ASP controller. Okay, so again, I've said before, the home is the controller, and we've got the action. So when we go back to in here, this is an action result, okay? And when I'm back in my layout, it's the action. So this is where, again, a controller is calling a method. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to want this to be actually about and about. Okay. So in the past we were, I could have done href and those links and all that kind of stuff, but in the core framework, it's much easier to just go with this type of syntax and forget about doing hrefs and links and all that kind of stuff, which would work, but that's not really what we want to do in this particular case. Okay, so obviously I'm going to want to go and test this out, and notice the yellow bar there. That just indicates that you've got some new code in your IDE. So I'm going to save that page. It changes to green. Okay. Now I want to go back, and I'm going to just refresh this, because remember we were in the debug without compiling. So I go to home, I click on that, it refreshes, and now look, there it is. There's about, okay, in the middle. I click it again. So I've updated my navbar, and now I can navigate to the different pages. Okay, so in essence, what I've now done is created a new page, and look at here in the footer, that was also updated to comp 2084. So it's all across everything like that. Okay, if I go to login, notice my footer is still updated. Same with, register and login, same updated footer. Okay, same updated navbar for everything. Okay. Okay. So here's an important thing to understand. There's a separation of concerns. Okay. We don't do anything inside the actual view except concern ourselves with what the user is seeing here. Okay. This doesn't, we're not connecting to the database here. These are completely separated things. So in the video that I posted on YouTube, you'll know that your view and your model, they don't talk to each other. They're completely separate concerns. Okay. This page, in fact, I could probably use on a different project if I wanted to. They're completely separate entities. Okay. There's no, you're not connecting to your database through this particular page. Okay. So it's important to realize these, what we refer to as separation of concerns. Another great thing about the separation of concerns is that when you've actually got a project team, when you've got the project team, your project team can be separated in terms of their concerns. So for example, you've got somebody doing the database stuff, you got somebody doing the front end, the look and feel of your website. You can separate all of those different functions in terms of developers and manpower, and really sort of maximize the amount of time that your staff is using or your team is using to build a website. It's not all sequential where one person has to do one thing. You just, once you've got the documentation, you can divide it amongst yourselves and conquer all the different tasks and work on the project that way. MVC actually it's one of the most powerful things about MVC is that it allows for you to do that kind of divide and conquer on projects. So it's really a great feature of this entire paradigm. So going back to the original question of why is it named View? Okay, why are all three of them called View? And I guess the biggest answer to that is because you want to ensure that that is the view that is always called. So for example, if I wanted a different view, I could specify that and I could say some other view. Okay, and it would go to that particular view. But in this particular case, we always want it to go to the view that has the navbar, the original view that we opened up on the home page. Okay, so that's why we keep calling it view, but you can specify other pages as well, or other views themselves. Okay, so in terms of GitHub, this is probably a good time now to go ahead and save our changes to our GitHub repository that we've already created. So if I go to Team Explorer, if you don't have the Team Explorer, then obviously view the fourth one down, it's Team Explorer, and that should pop up over here. And with this, you go to Home, and if I go to Changes, so I've already connected to my GitHub, but I'm doing this now. So I go to Changes, and what I want to do is put a really descriptive comment inside of my latest version of my code file. So what I've done is I've added the about, if I could spell, view to the project and connected to the navbar. Okay, and all I'm going to do at this point is commit all and push. Okay, and I'll save, and I've done that. Okay, so now I go back to my GitHub and I'm going to just do a refresh. Okay, and you can see here my commits. I've got 2 commits. Okay, so the latest one there is I've added the about view to the project and connected to the navbar, added project files, and let's go and click on this icon here. And what you see is an actual comparison or a view of the different files that I've got. So what you're seeing here is the red and the green are differences in what I had before. So in my footer, the first line was Georgian Computers, but then when I added the comp 2008-4, it's showing me the difference between the 2 lines of code. Okay, so that's a pretty cool feature of GitHub. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go back to my GitHub here. You see all my files are still there, and if I were to go and look at views, I can see all the files that are actually in there, shared, okay, layout, and you notice here I've got the about line here, so it's showing me my most current or up-to-date code that I have in that project as per that actual commitment. So it's been updated and I've got it in the cloud for as long as the cloud is in existence. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead there and take a bit of a break, and I'll come back soon and see what's next. Okay, and just one more point of clarification. I only have to configure or create the repository once and make the connection to the project file once. In the future, all I have to do is go in and commit the actual changes. I can just push my commits to the GitHub. I don't have to keep setting up or configuring this every time. I just have to go to the just into basically here changes and do my commits. That's all I have to do. Once it's been set up, each time I can keep going in and updating it. So that's a pretty awesome feature itself. Okay, so I'm back in GitHub, and one thing I want to do is show you guys, if you don't know already, how to go about getting a copy of the Georgian computers that I just worked on. So if you go into my GitHub account, if you're connected, and you go to Georgian computers, and you open it up, you've got clone or download. It's not recommended that you clone it, because if you take a clone version, that version is connected to my GitHub, so you're not actually going to be able to make any commits or pushes or anything like that to that. So the best way to do that is to do a download zip, and it'll download it locally to your computer, and then you'll have an actual copy of what I'm going to give you. I'm actually going to cancel that because I don't need it, but that's how you go about getting the file that I've created just now. So cloning a repository is only if ever you have write access to it. And in this case, none of you guys should have any write access to my repository. So download it and then use the code yourself and do whatever you want with it. But that's the difference between cloning and downloading. It really comes down to your write access or not write access. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the project again. I closed it. I've got a couple of ways I can do this. Obviously, I can just click on the link here. I could have gone and navigated to it, which is actually over here. If I click on that, Georgian computers, that's one way. So that's this Georgian computers.sln. That's another way I could turn it on. But I think the safest way is to just click on those links. And while it's opening up, there's one thing that I want to kind of want to highlight to you is that if you downloaded my code from here, again, you may have gotten into those dependency problems in your packages. Okay, so what you'd want to be doing is your manage your Nuget packages and stuff like that. It's possible that yours are not going to be up to date versed on the code that I had. And if not, then you can actually go even over to here. I'm just looking for resolve Nuget packages. Maybe it's not there here. Okay, or restore. Restore or resolve Nuget packages. So in this particular case, restore Nuget packages. So if you've downloaded it from mine, from my GitHub, and you're getting these errors or little yellow indicators over here, that's what you've got to do. Is you've got to go into solution, right click, restore Nuget packages. Okay. So from there, I've got the project file open again, and I think it's time we start doing some cool stuff. Okay, so once those packages are updated, then go ahead and go to build and do a rebuild solution. Hopefully that should resolve any issues that you may or may not have. Okay. Okay, for the moment, it's not very impressive to actually look at this website. It's not the nicest looking thing, but I'm not a designer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get help. I'm going to go to this Bootstrap. Okay, and just going to look at some different themes, maybe find something that's a little bit more appealing. Some of you probably have the ability to go into the CSS and figure out something better or nicer looking. But for the most part, I'm just going to go get some help from this, and you can modify your CSS file, or you can do something like similar to what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to look around at some of the themes and maybe add those to the project if I see something that I really like. But I got to find something that kind of appeals to everybody. Okay, but keep in mind it's a computer store. Right off the bat, I would I'm starting to like that superhero, but who knows? Let me take a break, or let me take a second and pick something. Okay, I think I've decided on this superhero look, and what I want to do though is I'm going to go to my sorry, it's not in here. I clicked on the wrong spot in my folder. Okay, and what I'm going to have to do is navigate down to these where the CSS is in the Bootstrap file. So it's not actually in CSS, it's in the library. Okay, and into Bootstrap. Okay, into dist CSS. So it's quite a long way to go, but that's when we download the file, this is where I actually want to save it. Okay, so I'm going to just I'm going to click on that and copy it, just in case when I do the save as, it asks me where to put it, and I can just drop that in there. So the two things I need is the min.css. Okay, oops, sorry, I should not have clicked that way, but I could do a save as, and up here, I'll drop that link in there, and see the file's already in there, but I'm gonna actually right there, I'm gonna actually overwrite that, and yes, I'm gonna replace that. Okay, I'm not gonna open it yet, and I'll go to the next one, which is the Bootstrap Dot Css, and what I wanted to do, I'll just do it the way I did it a second ago. Save as, right back to the same location, and there's the Bootstrap. Click save, yes. Okay, and I'll close that. I'm gonna go back in here, and I shouldn't see any updates on there, but let me have a quick look here. If I update this, see, completely drastic change, totally drastic. And you can see we've got all our stuff up here. Everything still works. We're good to go. So for the moment, I'm kind of happy with how that looks, and I think I'm going to keep that. Okay, so we still do have one little challenge that we've got to sort of overcome here. Okay, we're not quite done here with what we've done by updating this CSS, okay? But just to confirm it's all there. So one of the challenges that we've got is we've got to go back up into our layout, and we've got to change the actual environment that they're in, because right now we're in development, but when we actually go to production, or we post this live, all of our changes right now are going to get wiped out. So I actually have to go in and make sure that that's actually updated properly. Okay, so I'm just looking up here, and when I actually, you know what, I think I can actually leave it the way it is. So my issue is right here, these two things here. Okay, so this is my lib bootstrap dist css bootstrap.min.css. And we actually need that link almost exactly actually as it is right now. So I think that's a recent update maybe that they've done with Visual Studio. So I was actually going to go in and change that, but it looks like I don't have to, so that's good. So when we go from the development environment to an actual production environment or go live, we should have all of our CSS changes saved to us. Okay, so that's a really good thing, and it's one less thing that we actually have to worry about. So I'm definitely going to go make sure I save that. Okay, so life is good. And one thing I want to notice, that theme that I just downloaded from that site, from Bootswatch, is also changed the font that we used as well. Okay, not just the colors, it was the font, and just some of the other formatting. Okay, so lucky for us, in a few clicks, it took care of a massive amount of work that we would have had to have done in the past. I think one thing I'd like to do right now is go in and actually change my home page. Okay, so if I go to View, Homes, Not About, I want to go into Index, open that up. It's not as nice as it should be, so I think now might be a good time to do that. So first thing off, I'm going to change this home page to Georgian. Oops, sorry. Went to the wrong keyboard for that for a second. Okay, so definitely the home page I'm going to change to Georgian Computers, and I think I'll update some of that text. Welcome to, and let's see, what else do I want to put in? Maybe instead of this learn about, this project is for building web apps with ASP.NET Core. What else have we got in there? We're going to use SQL Server. Comp. Oh. And I don't need that A or that period. I'll put the period in. Okay, and I think what I'll do is I'm just going to save that, and I can go back to my home page, do a refresh. That should change from home to Georgian Computers. Welcome to Georgian Computers, and there. Okay, did everything change the way I wanted it to change? And what did I miss? I missed something. Okay, actually everything to me looks as it should be. I think now what I want to do is go in, and I'm actually going to add a README file to this project. So if I go to the very top, right click, and I do add a new item, and I want a text file, and I'm going to actually call this README, and it's saved as a text file. So I've got that here, and if I go back to my index, what I just wrote, I can just basically right click all of that. If I copy, I go to my README, save. I've got a README file. I can update this as I continue on with the project. Sorry, I actually made a mistake with that. That shouldn't be as a .txt. Okay, so what I'm you know, it's easier if I just go and it's a good opportunity to show you how to remove something, but I'm going to remove that. Okay, go back and do an add, new item, text, and I'm going to call it README, and this should be a MD, so a markdown, okay, not a text file. That was the mistake that I made. Let's see, do I have any MD extensions here? I don't see one, but yeah, it doesn't look like there is one, but so I'll save that. I put it in, and notice here it's got the .md for markdown language. Okay, so that's good. And do I still have the paste? Yep, I still have the paste. Go into there, and you can see right here I've got this README file here as an MD. Okay, Okay, and now that it's in there, it's a markdown language, so it basically abides by all the HTML syntax. So this is a H1. Oh, H1. Let me. There's this, and then this becomes a paragraph. So this is just normal, normal syntax for doing any web dev or HTML. Okay. Done. Okay, and I save that. In fact, just so you know, any markdown language that you use in GitHub, it typically does follow the HTML syntax. So when this goes to GitHub and you click on the README, it's going to actually be interpreted by your GitHub as HTML content files. Okay. And because I've got my GitHub page still open, notice here I don't have any README files in there at all. Okay, and I've got 3 commits. So I'll go back to here. I'll go to my Team Explorer, and I'm going to do a change. I'm going to put a comment in there, and my comment is going to be changed the theme, and also added a README file. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. Then I'm going to go to add or commit all and push. Click on that. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to GitHub. Notice again, there's no README, but when I update this, okay, and you can look at the commit, and you notice down here I've got the there's the readme.md and readme.txt. So when I did the remove, I actually didn't delete it. So somewhere in there, it's still there. But let's go back to, let's look at the commits. Okay, so right here in this commit, I changed the theme and also added a README file. So if I look at the versions between the last two, you're seeing the differences, excuse me, you're seeing the differences in here of what I was changing. Okay, so anyway, let's go back into the code and make some more changes and then some more commits. Okay. Okay, so really quickly, I do want to take this opportunity also to show you the difference between a readme.txt in GitHub. Okay, so when I click on that, you are seeing like the lines here that I wrote. This project is for building ball. Okay, that's that one there. And then notice when I go back to the other README, the MD, you click on that. This is actually more in a website style or fashion. So I'm just trying to show you the difference between the two. Okay, since we've got this, one thing I want to do is maybe throw up a logo up on our navbar somewhere. So what I am definitely going to do is I've already picked out an image. I just literally went and Googled it, got it off the internet, and that's what it looks like right here. Nothing special at all. It was royalty free. Don't care if I ever see this again. Obviously, for your project this year, if you want to do a logo, go ahead. Probably be part of the assignment anyway. So I've got the logo there, and I'm going to go ahead and try to put that into the program. So I want to go back to Visual Studio, and I'm going to actually go on to here and create a new folder. Okay, and I'm going to call this IMG for images. There. And in a second, I'm going to go and put that image that I just found. I'll put it in that spot. So one way that I definitely want to put that image in there is I actually would like to, I'll copy it, and I'm going to navigate to the actual project file, view, webroot, images, and I'll paste it in there. So now it's in there, and when I update my file, you can see now that that's where it is currently at the moment. Okay, so that's a good thing. Let's go and try to put into the actual web page itself. So obviously, if I want to do this inside the navbar, I've got to go back to my layout.css HTML. And you would think that maybe it has something to do with this line 6, our title. But in actual fact, that's not where we actually want to do it. I've got to go back into my header to my navbar. And if you look at some of the things, I want you to just take a quick moment and see perhaps where you think it belongs. Okay. Turns out line 14 is what we want to do. I want to take this where it says Georgian computers, and that's what I actually want to replace, and put the logo in that spot there instead. So I'm actually going to replace that with an image tag. So what I don't need is this actual text right here with this Georgian computer. So I'm gonna replace that with an image tag. Okay. And it is located in image, and there it is. The beauty is the IntelliSense is actually going to tell me what it's called, because if you look at that name, that OIPT4, like that's not intuitively something that I would type in. So I could use the IntelliSense to select it and put it in there. So we're actually, that's pretty good in terms of debugging or potential debugging. And we just have to close it out. There. Okay, so that piece is done, but one thing I'm entirely unsure of yet is the actual size of the image. So I may have to reduce that down. And I think if you were to go onto the image properties, probably somewhere in here, it'll give you some detail about the size of the image itself. But you'd have to probably go into your file explorer and look for that information. Right now, let's just go ahead and run it. Debug start without debugging, and look at that. That thing is ridiculously large. I don't like the look of it, so I think I want to go in and reduce the size of it. So the best way to do that, I think, is going to be to go into the file itself, into here, and image. And what I'm going to do is open this up in open with Paint. Okay, and notice the size. It looks like it's 193 by 183. And if I resize that, let's go resize it 50%. I don't know. So it makes it much smaller. I save that. And because I opened it up in the project file, it should be automatically updating in our actual project. So if I go back down to here, I'm going to save that just to, I suppose I don't need to save it, but debug, start without debugging, it's much smaller. Okay, much smaller. So For the most part right now, I'm kind of happy with that, and I'm going to just leave it. So one thing to note also is that we've actually linked it to this index, or the home, and the index method. So when I do actually go to here, if I go to, let's say, About, I navigate away, I click on the actual logo, it takes me back to my home page. Okay, so in the code we did both. We replaced the index here with an image, but we also added an image to the actual file. So I think at this point, maybe it's an appropriate time to go back to my GitHub and do a change. And I'm just going to type in here, added logo to Navbar. That's all. And I'm going to commit and push. I'll go back to my GitHub. Okay, and do a refresh. Okay. If you'll notice, I've got another commit. And added logo to my navbar. Okay. And in my www root, notice I've also got the image folder in there. And when I open that up, I've got the JPEG. Okay. So I think the next thing to do is I want to make another controller. I'm going to add something further to this project. So let's go ahead and make a new controller. Okay, so I think I want to make a new controller, and so I'm just going to tidy up some of these, minimize a lot of these drop downs. Okay, it makes it more neat to work in. But right now I've only got a single home controller. So if I go to controllers and I right click and I do add, the first option it gives me is add a new controller. So when I do that, look at here, you can see that I've got 6 different options. Right now we're going to ignore the bottom 3. These are APIs. We're not going to deal with those. And when you click on these, on the right hand side here, you see that it gives you some information about what it is that you're doing. Okay, and in this particular case, if I do an MVC controller with views using Entity Framework, this is an MVC controller with actions and razor views to create, read, update, delete. That's CRUD. And if you haven't heard it by now, you will become familiar with it going forward. So this is for doing some CRUD. Don't do this. I don't want you to do this right now, but I'm just going to open it up and show you that it's got, our shared layout and some other things in here. So right now, if I drop it down, it's asking me for different options here. Okay, but right now we're not going to get into this. What I want to do is actually go back and add controller. I want to do an empty. Okay. There's read and write actions, but we'll do that another time. But right now I'm just going to do an empty. And notice here it's highlighting over the first word in this thing. You must give it a controller. So I'm going to call this store. And it's going to keep the controller. Don't worry about any of the extensions or anything like that. Okay, so just add store, and it's going to take a little bit of time to generate. So there it is. So if you look back over in controllers, notice we have home and we have store. Okay, so if you've gotten to this point, you're doing great. Okay, so I'm going to just sort of close out some of these files for now. They're just kind of in my way. I'm going to move the layout. Now, what I want you to understand with this is that this line here, the namespace GeorgianComputers.controllers, that's in the home controller. But if you look at the new controller we made, it's also in the same namespace. They're both the same namespace. So that means that the two of them can actually see each other. So that's of great benefit to us. So I think now is probably an appropriate time to just save that, and I'm going to do a rebuild, or I'm going to build the solution, okay? It's because I've added a major component to it, and I want to make sure that it all gets, the DLL file gets updated in the bin. And notice I've got 1 succeeded, 0 failed. But let me go out here and I'll turn this off, and just so that it doesn't overpopulate my my web pages. But I'm going to go to debug, start without debugging. But before I do that, we've built the store controller, but what do you suppose is going to happen? Okay, just think about that for a second while I go ahead and do this, but take a guess at what you think might happen. Okay, I've got this, but now let's say I want to go to store. Okay. As expected, I got this error. And the reason is because we didn't actually make a view for this yet. And so what it's doing is it's kind of going down the top of the list. It's saying, okay, in views, is there a store index? No. So in views shared, is there an index? No. So in pages shared index? No. So in order to fix this, we're actually going to have to go and do a views store index, which we never built. All we did was basically create a controller that takes us to a view that doesn't currently exist. Okay, so let's do that now. So earlier we created a new view as well. So if we go over to here, we've got we've got the about.cs HTML. That's the view that we made the last time. So I think the last time all we do is we just highlight index, or we double click index, right click, add view. Okay, and what do you suppose we call it? Store, S-T-O-R-E. Okay, and just like before, empty template, leave alone. We want it in this views shared layout.css. Okay, we've got other options, but that's where we want to be. Okay. Or do I want to be in home? Maybe I want to be in home. What do you think? I think it makes more sense that our views go into home. Okay. So I click on that. I do an add. Uh-oh. Look what happened. Over here, I've got a different file than I was intending. That's actually not a bad thing. Okay, we actually did do the right thing. Okay, if you were expecting it to show up in there, it's not, because we made a new controller. We made the store controller. This controller here is associated with these views. This store controller is going to be associated with this file here. Okay, so that's the big difference. If you're expecting anything to be in here, you would have been incorrect. We're making a different view entirely for the different controller. So now if I go to store, what I can do is right click, add a view. Okay, and here I'm going to actually call this one index. Okay. And with that index, I've got to do an update in here. Now, notice here this views home about, that's not the one we want. In fact, we want to make sure we use a layout page, but what we really want is our views shared this layout. This contains all of the CSS or the bootstrapping that we did earlier. We want the shared one so that we get that common look and feel across all of our views. Okay, and then from there, just hit add. Okay, so if we go back to, we've got the index, we've got the stored. Now, that all looks right. Let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. Okay, so we go up to start without debugging. Notice we're here, we haven't updated a nav page, but if I do type in store, now it takes us to that index page. Okay, so we're on the right track. Obviously we want to put something in the navbar or something somewhere so that we can navigate and not have to go up to here. Okay. Okay, I would like to make one point of clarification. There's a difference between interpreting and compiling. So when I did all of this year, notice that I didn't actually do any code in C#. When I do C# updates or add new features or files or whatever, and I'm updating that code, that's when I have to do a rebuild. I have to recompile and update the DLL file. But if I'm just dealing exclusively with HTML type of things, then I can interpret that, and I don't need to actually go and rebuild that and compile it. So I just wanted to clarify the two differences. Only when it comes to doing updates with C# files, any of the .cs files, do I really need to do that. So when you look at store controller.cs, if I go in here and I update any code in here, that's when I have to do a rebuild or a recompile before the update has to happen or can happen. But when it comes to doing HTML, that's just an interpreter and I can refresh. Okay, let's make a few sort of aesthetic changes while we're here. So we'll change this to shop at the Georgian and then down here I'm going to say while I'm not going to do any database stuff today, we're just going to start to build out sort of the framework to it. There, I'm just going to make those changes quickly. Suppose I should put a little bit more on there. Okay. And we'll just go do this refresh. Okay, so just placeholders, that's all they are right now. My goal today is not to get into coding all of this stuff. It's more about getting used to doing the views and the controllers. Okay. So one thing I want to do is I want to create those, turn these product links actually into hyperlinks, but I want to use the ASP syntax to do that. I don't want to do maybe the way you learn to do links or hrefs and stuff like that in your HTML course. I want to use the actual ASP syntax for that. So it's still a list view, but what I'm gonna do is I'll take that out of there. I'm gonna do this, and it's ASP controller. So if you go down to use your IntelliSense, always use your IntelliSense. It's magic in terms of helping you avoid debugging. Okay, it already gives you the equal signs and the information to put into. So, okay, and then ASP dot action. Okay, look at how easy that is. Okay, detail Okay. And product 1, and we're still in an LI. Okay, nice and simple. So I'll go ahead and do those for the next two. Okay, so I've gone ahead and changed those, but I want you to think about this for a minute, what I'm doing. I've got my controller store, okay, which is over here, or up here. But notice this action. What we did in the past is with this action, it was always a method call. But the issue at the moment is we actually haven't made a method called details. So I can go here and do a refresh. Okay, and give it a second. Okay, nothing's happening. So it's should be a link, and I'm not 100% sure at this moment why it isn't, but it should be. So let's go try and figure it out together. And of course, the biggest issue is that I didn't actually save it. And if I go back to here and I do an update or a refresh, those all turn into hyperlinks. Okay, so that's the one thing I forgot to do. Is I did all this code, but I have to save it, and then I can do a refresh. Important details. So I think it's time we go back into Visual Studio Code and we address this particular function. Okay. I'd like to also note that if I click on this, it's really got nothing there. There's nothing to see here. I haven't populated this in any way yet. So if I go back, I hit 2, there's nothing. I hit 3, there's nothing. Okay, so the hyperlinks are there, but they're linking to nothing. Okay, so if I'm back in Visual Studio and I want to create a view to navigate to, we always talk about this. We're in the controller, which is where we are, the store controller, but now we need that details method. So I'm hoping you really quickly see where this is going or what has to be done. And so what I'm going to do is actually, I've already done it, so I'm just going to put it in there. I've got my iAction result details. I need that details method, and I've got the view. Okay, so now the next thing we have to do is actually create a view for it to go to. So again, I right click on that, add view. Now I give it a name. Do I do empty? Do I do shared layout? Where do I put this? So take a minute and think about it. Where do I put this? Okay, do I go to shared? Do I go to store? What makes sense to you to put this in? So the answer is shared layout. It's the same thing. Okay, shared layout, details. Okay, add. Okay. Look at this. I've got my details method right here, or my details view. Okay. Good. So at this point, I think what I want to do is confirm that all my links are going to this new details page. So I'll do a quick save. I'll go to here, do a refresh. And click on this page, and you can see down at the bottom left corner, when I hover the mouse over it, it shows what the URL is currently. So that's a good sign right now. So as I click on that, it goes right to my details page. So that's pretty good so far. So I just want to confirm that. So product 2 and product 3, all three of them go to the details page. So the one current issue that I have right now is that when I click on all these product links, they do take me to the same page, right? when I do that, it's all the same location. I can't yet distinguish between product 1, product 2, and product 3. So that's an issue that I have to address. Is once I get there, they seem to those routes seem to be leading right back to the same page. So that's what we're going to address. Okay, so what I need to do is I've actually got to pass info to the controller. I've got to modify the method in there, and then modify the links. So if I go back to my store controller and I've got this details method, one of the things I need to do is I've got to update this. Okay, so just watch what I do and I'll explain it after. So string product. Okay, so I've put that in there. You'll see these little things under there. Don't worry about that for now. Let's just see what it says. Show potential fixes. Just at the moment, I'm not too concerned about it. Okay, and it's not showing up as an error yet. But string product. Okay. Now I need to go back to my details. Sorry, my index. And I'm going to do some updating to these as well. Before I leave this page, I'm actually going to do a build. Okay, I'll build that solution. And 1 succeeded, 0 failed. We're good. So let's go to our right into here, and let's do some updates in this spot too. So what I want to do is I actually have to add a route, and I'll explain to that in a minute, but let's just quickly look at what's going on here. So I've got ASP, okay, always use the IntelliSense, and I'm looking for route, ASP route, okay, and oops, let me take that out, hyphen, and I'm going to use the same word, product, okay, and that is going to equal, this, equals product, should be equals product, there, and now we're going to call this product 1, okay, and so everything there looks fine, and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to update the other ones in a moment. So I'm still using the details method, but I'm passing this product, and this product here, okay, this has to match this here. So one thing that I like to always do is, when I need to have an absolute match, is I always copy and paste it, and that way I avoid any spelling mistakes, because the first time around I could have spelt that completely wrong, and so what if I spelt it wrong, you know, I don't have any errors even though I've just got bad spelling. So I copy and paste that in there, and that's as it should be. Okay, so let's just go ahead and test out that first line, and if it works, then we can go and copy it into the other ones. Obviously I haven't got a way to navigate through the Navbar at the moment, but that's not a big deal. I'm just going to refresh that, and obviously I haven't done product 3 or product 2, but down on the bottom left you see it highlighted, it says stores/details. But now when I highlight over this one, I clicked on it and I didn't get any result that I was hoping for. Not a big deal. So let me go back to the code. I'm going to save it, go back, I'm going to do a refresh. Now you can see it down in the bottom left. Okay, again, you got to make sure that you are always either rebuilding or saving before you do your refresh. So if you look at the URL down in the bottom left that pops up, it says product %201. and then the other ones are not that. Okay, so we're on the right track with that. Let's go back to Visual Studio and I'll update the other two links with this ASP route product. Okay, so we're back here. I've just simply gone ahead and done the updates. So ASP route product, and that product is the same as the parameter back here in, sorry, not there, in my controller, this product, right? And let's go back. I've saved it and I've refreshed it. And the original one was product 201. Now it's product 202, product 203. So that worked. So what this actually means is that they all go to the same page, but they all pass in a very distinctive parameter value. Okay, so if I were to click on any of those, it takes me to details. Yes, each one still does that, but I've got a unique identifier on all three of those. Okay. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to be able to go to my details page and have a corresponding output based on when I do click on product 1, product 2, or 3. So if I go to here, details doesn't tell me anything, but when I click on one of those, what I want it to be able to do is, yes, go to the details page, but give me, demonstrate that it's actually selected the product 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so when I go back to here, I've got product, but how do I use that in my details CSS or CSHTML page? So that's what we're going to do now. So in our in the store controller, I'm going to update the details method with something called a view bag, and the view bag itself is it's just an empty container, and what this looks like is exactly how it sounds. VIE, or if I could spell the view bag. Okay, view bag dot product. Okay, I was hoping that it would, but it's going to do this one. This product. Okay, and don't forget this is C#. Okay, this part is C#. So what I'm going to do, I'll just throw in a couple comments. I'm going to store the selected product name in the view bag container, and the view bag automatically passes back the view that loads. Okay. So I should be able to display the name of the product. I want to be able to reference that view bag dot product and view that. So because this is a C# file, I am going to build. Okay, and now I want to go over to my details. Okay. Now over in details, because this is a server-side value, the one thing that I can do now is I can go to the view dot product, and the one thing that I'm actually missing is the @ sign. So this view bag. Oh. Okay. Okay, so I've saved this, and I go back to here. I'll do a refresh, and look, product 1 details, product 2, and product 3. So the one thing is that we don't often use the view bag, but it can be quite handy. In this case, it worked out perfect. But you know, there's a lot more to this than I'm showing, but we've got lots of time in the semester to work out and learn a lot more about this. So let's continue on. So the one thing about a view bag is that typically we do use it for doing like a simple or single value. And I guess a good example would be maybe on a search page. So if you go on to say Amazon and you do a search for ASP.NET Core books on Amazon in the search bar, and those are single value or simple value items or products that it's going to detail. So that's kind of an example of where you might use a view bag. Okay, so that's been a lot of stuff, some pretty good updates. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to GitHub. I go to Home, go to Changes, and added another store. Not another. I added another store controller and a view bag of products. Okay, that's all I think I've done on that one. Probably done a little bit more than that, and I'm going to commit all and push. Okay, I will go back to GitHub, okay, and do a refresh. Okay, and look at my commits. Added a store controller and a view bag of products. Okay. So, let's see what's next. So one more thing I think I want to do before I finish this up, and I think it's I'd rather be able to pass the list of products from the controller into the view. So let me just go ahead right now, and I'm going to actually comment all of this out and comment that out. And notice by commenting it out, I've got the star asterisk to comment that out. So what I'm going to do now, I'm mocking it up, but in the future we're going to replace a lot of this stuff from the actual database. But for now, let's just kind of view it as a placeholder. So what I want to do is go back to Solution Explorer, see if I can close down some of these, make it a little neater. And I'm actually going to go to Models. I'm going to right click, add a class. And this class, I'm actually going to call this product with a capital P. Product. Okay. And hit add. So the good thing about this is next week or in the next video, I'm actually going to let Visual Studio create this. Right now I'm doing it, but we'll blow this away next week. But for the time being, look, we've got to do it manually, but next time we're actually going to let Visual Studio generate this model on our behalf. And notice that not only is the products.cs here, it's here, public class product inside the Georgian computer.models namespace, and then it appears over here in the models file as product.cs. Okay. So the product is simply right now just going to have a single value. Okay, so it's going to be a public. Oh, I'm really struggling to type this today. So public, and it's a string name, and it's going to have a read and write property, which will be get, which is read, and set, which is write. Okay, that's all that's going to be, really simple. So I'm going to go to back to my store controller in the index, Okay, and I think I want to make like maybe a list of 10 different products at this point. I'm recording. Okay, sweetie, you're making noise. I love you, but I can't talk to you right now, okay? Love you. Close the door. Come close the door. Please. Okay, thank you. Var product equals new list. Okay, and I will select that list, and I'll call this from our class that we just did. And we're good. If for some reason you're getting a red line under here, it's because of your namespace. So if you look up here, Visual Studio 19 does this. Computers.models is in here, but when you go back to your product, that's that namespace there, Georgian.models. So in my store controller, Georgian computers.models has to be there. If it's not, you might get a red line under here, and you could probably it'll do a drop down as to potential fixes or something like that. That's just in case you don't have it, but in 19 it seemed to have taken care of that problem for me by linking this line here. It's the only way for this particular controller to be able to look at the other controller and say, okay, I know what that is. I know what your product is. Because I'm linked, you're allowing me to have visual access into the this class right here. So it's very important that you're including the proper namespace in this store controller. So because I'd like to populate just to say that we've got 10 different products. What I'm going to do is actually I'll use a for loop to do this, okay? Because it's the best way for me to actually get to the increment from 1 to 10. So what I'll do is I'll just use a for loop to populate the product list. Okay, and it's a for loop. So for, okay, so var I is going to start at 1 because I don't want it to say product 0. I want it to start at product 1. I is less than or equal to 10, and then I plus plus. Okay, and in here we're talking about products. So products dot add new product. That's our object. Okay, and yeah, name will equal product and plus I dot to string, and this here, and I'm missing a semicolon. There, that should do it there. So all of that means is that it's going to list out product 10 times. It's going to start at 1, and as it goes through the for loop, it's just going to continue to increment this part here and make that show 2, 3, all the way up to 10. That's all that loop is doing. So just to restate, this is not going to be the final product list. Eventually, this is going to come from a database query. But for now, we're just trying to set up how we want this to look and feel. Next week, when we start getting into the database piece, that's when we'll kind of abandon this and in favor of doing this from the database for probably more real or realistic products. Okay, so there's still one more thing that we have to do. You'll notice down in the details, we were able to pass a parameter. Well, in these views, we can actually do the exact same thing, which is what we need to do. We need to pass the product list to the view. Okay, so here, what I have to do is type in products. Okay, and of course I use the IntelliSense. And a good tip, I know I've been going on about the IntelliSense, but my always thought is, if you actually see it populate in IntelliSense, that's a good thing. You're doing something right. So good. So in the view, the products are going to be populated in there. Okay, so I just added in a comment there. And I guess this would be a good time. I'll hit save, and I'm going to do a build the solution. You can see it churning away there. And no failures, one succeed. Okay, so let's go back into here and see what happens. Okay. Okay, so one thing that I've done is I rebuilt it. I saved it. Okay, oops, sorry. I've gone, and where you can see my product list, I did a refresh. Okay, and everything disappeared. That's because I still need to go back into my my index for this and do something in here. Okay, because right now all it says is, hey, please choose a product. But don't forget, I commented all that out. I have to now get it back onto the view somehow. Now the way we do that is, it's actually at the top of the page on line 1. We tell it, say, hey, listen, this page actually has a model. So at model, okay, at model. So what I have to do is actually do something called Enumerable. Okay, and you can see it that just like that, Enumerable, and that is for any kind of a collection or similar object. Okay, so in this case, it's what products are. So it goes inside these angle brackets, and what's our model name? It's actually Georgian computers. You can see here, Georgian computers dot products. Where is it? Oh, sorry, I needed to put it into models first, and then dot product. Okay, so there. We need that line. That line's a pretty vital line if we want to be able to repopulate this this page. So we have to tell the view to expect to get a list of products from the model, and that they're that list of the products. But don't forget, we have to be able to look into this. So this is the products Georgian models. Okay. Sorry, I lost it. Okay, here it is in our index. So Georgian computers.model, and then you're getting the list of those common objects, which is products. Okay. And given that we used Enumerable, it's not getting a single product, it's getting a list of products. Okay. If it was actually getting a single item, you would only see this. Okay. without the brackets. Okay, but you're getting a list. But in this case, we're not. We're getting an entire list, not a single product object. Okay, so now I want to get to the point where I can display this to my screen. Okay, so switching over to more HTML style, I'm going to do a for each. And so it'll be at for each. Okay, at for each var product in model. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. This model, you see the message comes up, Enumerable products below it, means the same as this one up here. And it's a strange Microsoft syntax thing, but that's a lowercase model and that is a uppercase model. Doesn't matter. Don't know why. Don't necessarily care. Just work with it. So next what I want to do is I'm going to break that off and I'm going to do an li. And this will be at product. Okay, dot name. Okay. Now I'm going to hit, I'm going to save everything. And I haven't updated any CS or C# right now. So let's go back here and see what happens. Okay, so you can see here now I've got, it's just outputting to my screen 10 different links. Okay, but I can't seem to click on any of them right now. Okay, so let's just do a quick modification to this here. Okay, so what do I want to do at this point? So definitely what I'm going to do is this. Aspe controllers, or controller, sorry. And I'm going to call this store Asp action. I'm looking to see if there's, okay, action, but I need, sorry, that was the right one. Details and Asp dot route, and for this route I want product equals, and this is going to be the at product dot name. Okay, close that off, and at product dot name. Okay, am I missing anything? I don't think I am. Okay, so I think that looks right. Look at these here. They're white color, so if I go back and I hit a save, okay, I'm gonna go back here and refresh, and maybe they'll change color and I'll get some sort of indication that they're linked. Okay, that's good. So they've all turned blue, and when I click on this, I get details, but I don't have everything on there that I need. It should say product 1 details. So let's go back and see what I missed. Okay, 2, yeah. Okay, so looking at the code, it looked like I had possibly an error in the spelling of this, which caused an interruption. So what I did is I went to this, because I knew this code worked before. I copied and I pasted it in here. I did a save, I did everything, a rebuild, refresh, you name it. And now I refreshed it, and I click on this, and now it should work. There, product 1 details. So I think we're good so far today with all this. What I want to do is now go back to GitHub and push GitHub, see what I've done, new, change, and what have I done? I've created a mock model of a product until I get the base set up next time. Okay, and commit, and I've sent it. Okay, and here's the latest commit here to this. So I created a mock-up of product until I get the database set up. Okay, so that was 2 minutes ago. The last one I did was an hour before that, 2 hours, 3, 5, 6. So, you know, it's taken some time to set up a lot of this stuff. So for this week, you're actually going to be expected to do a short lab. It'll be based on a lot of the stuff you've seen in this video. It'll be available during your regularly scheduled time in Blackboard, and it'll be called Lab 2. And it'll follow through a lot of the stuff I've done here, give you some time to play around, experiment, do whatever you want. It shouldn't take you too long. Watch the video, do what I did, and then go back and do the lab. And hopefully by, you know, just the repetition, you'll start to catch on with a lot of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to conclude the video there, and next week we'll get more into maybe using database stuff and make this thing really awesome. And then I'm also probably next week going to introduce assignment 1. Okay, so thanks for watching this, and stay tuned for the next video, I guess.